how does AI and how does Google determine genuine content and versus the garbage that's being produced? And what are the authority triggers today in modern marketing?
AI systems don't just retrieve content. They interpret and they summarize and they recombine it. And that kind of changes the reward system. In traditional SEO, ranking meant visibility, but in AI-driven search, citation and inclusion mean visibility.
All search engines are interested in getting the best information to the query, to the user with the least amount of friction as possible. And if you're making your content that way, you actually kind of have a crystal ball.
It's great if I say, oh, you're coming up in the AI results and look at all these impressions, but then is that converting to actual revenue for you? If you want authoritative content that actually gives a unique, original perspective, you still need that human side of it.
All right, welcome back to SEO on Air. I'm Koa Kauwe, the head of partnerships at Stand Ventures. At Stand Ventures, we work with agencies and brands across the country, helping them build authority through transparent white hat link building and SEO execution. Today, we have 3 agency guests joining us, and we're going to get their perspective on a few things, specifically, I think, around content and SEO, around their perspectives on AI and the SEO industry right now. And then we also want to get them to tell us a little bit about the future at the end of the call on where they think SEO tactics are going to be evolving the most over the next year or two. So joining us, I'll start with Aaron. Please, Aaron, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your agency.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Aaron Carpenter. I'm the owner of Mental Health Marketing, where we help people who help people. We've been open since 2011, and we're a full digital creative agency. So we do everything from logos, websites, to search engine optimization, paid ads, and social media management.
I'm glad to have you here, Aaron. Thanks for joining us. Jaryn, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jaryn Dominique. I'm the lead strategist and CEO of Deviant Digital Services. We're an agency that opened in 2020, but myself and my team have been doing this for over 15 years now, so lots of experience between all of us. We help agencies build a digital strategy to be, not agencies, businesses and brands be found online using strategies that work best for them so they don't get fit in a box. So that can be SEO strategies, digital ads, social media, PR, you name it, we help you with it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Jaryn. And Erika, last but not least.
Hey, Koa, thanks for having me. I'm Erika Montgomery. My agency is 3 Girls Media, Inc. I founded the company in 2005 after a very long broadcasting career and work for another agency as well. And we specialize primarily in content creation, digital strategy, and SEO. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I get the privilege to chat with each of you before the podcast to learn a little bit about your backgrounds, to learn a little bit about your strategies. What's interesting about this group is not everyone agreed on how AI should be used or the way content's created and some other things. So this is a fun conversation to have, to just share what we think is working from our perspectives on SEO. And it's I think we're viewing this as a fun debate between each other, a chance to learn more than it is a chance to prove anyone right. One of the things I think I've enjoyed the most about SEO is I've never talked to an SEO agency that wasn't doing it right. So it's always fun to hear how you're optimizing it and choosing your path for your customers based on really trying to get success for their own unique aspects of marketing. So I'm excited to have all 3 of you here. We'll dive into the first question, and it's a pretty broad question from just understanding the AEO, GEO, AI SEO, SEO conversation, right? So there's a whole bunch of EIOs in there. Is SEO evolving, or is there a unique structural shift that's actually changing how SEO works? Like we've seen where a lot of people have said SEO is dead, and I think this is my way of trying to avoid that term because I don't think it's dying, but it's evolving in a way that we've never seen before. And some agencies would disagree and say that it's always changing, and this is just a very minor change to what core SEO practices should already be implemented by pretty much every company, and that not really that much has changed at all. So I want to hear from the 3 of you guys if you think that SEO has truly taken a unique pivot that it's not done before, or if you feel like we're just a small evolution to the path that it's been taking.
Yeah, I don't think it's a small evolution at all. I think it's a structural shift. Absolutely. search used to be retrieval based, right? So you searched and Google retrieved and you clicked. But now we're really in a synthesis era. AI systems don't just retrieve content. They interpret and they summarize and they recombine it. And that kind of changes the reward system. In traditional SEO, ranking meant visibility, but in AI-driven search, citation and inclusion mean visibility. So the game has kind of shifted from can you rank to can you be referenced? And I think that's really a fundamental architectural change.
Yeah, I agree with you, Erika. I agree. I don't want to say SEO is dead because that breaks my heart, and I love SEO. So I want to say that it was a natural evolution to get here, but at the same time, this is a huge core change. It's changing the way we're reporting. It's changing the way people are obviously coming up. It's not just a matter of ranking or traffic anymore, because actually a lot of people's traffic is going down, but impressions are going up. And so I don't know about you guys, but it's had me kind of evaluate all of our strategies again, really try to figure out what our new KPIs are, because it's great if I say, oh, you're coming up in the AI results and look at all these impressions, but then is that converting to actual revenue for you? I don't know if you guys are struggling with that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. When I first got started in the agency space, I worked for an SEO optimization agency. That's all that agency did. And I worked on my creative agency at the same time and then opened doors. And I've been providing that service ever since. And like when I got started, some OGs, Erika, Jaryn, you sounds like you've been in the space longer too. But like, do you guys remember when keyword stuffing was like how you got business done? Right?
You just wrote it over and over again. Yep.
And it seems like every single time that that businesses like Google have tried to remove friction from getting the user the information they need, there have been like breakthroughs on their part, like from their chair to get that done. Removing keyword stuffing kind of created a new era where like the content just had to be better. You couldn't just like shove it all into a page and watch it skyrocket to number one. Then a link game happened where then people started selling and buying links and Google started to quash that. And it's it's the same as it ever was. It's a cat and mouse game where Google thinks they've got it figured out now. And then SEO optimists, like optimization specialists, are optimistic and figure out the best way to leverage what they know. And then Google has to come back over the top. AI is just a new facet to that whole game. But what I've found is just staying true to the same things that were good back in the day to now, not a tactic or like a trick, but like what was good was always, Google is always interested, all search engines are interested in getting the best information to the query, to the user with the least amount of friction as possible. And if you're making your content that way, you actually kind of have a crystal ball. You become Nostradamus because no matter what happens in the future, your stuff's still going to perform well. You might not have tips and tricks and like little shortcuts and things that you're leveraging when you're doing it that way, but your content is always going to perform well if that's the core part of your strategy. That's what we stick to here.
No, I completely agree, Aaron. I've been saying this a lot lately, and I think we'll circle back to it on one of the other questions. But those who've actually been working on SEO for years, they're the ones that are coming out on top right now with this shift. Like I'm sure you've seen the ones that are being pulled into the AI results. Usually it's content that's been established and optimized for years now. And if anything, it's also pointing into holes for some SEO strategies because some people are not coming up on the right results. So how are your guys' clients handling it, though? How many of them are panicking or how many of them are understanding it?
My clients don't understand the first thing that we do, and they'll be the first to admit it. That mental health clinicians, they go to school to learn how to work with people. And then, man, it is a struggle bus just to get basic stuff done on a laptop. And I'm sure they're all listening to me laughing about that right now. It's just a fact. It's really rare to run into like a business focused or even like a digital creative type person who's also like running a mental health facility or private practice. But that being said, you know, we have clients that aren't mental health clinicians also. And it's like I would always say if web design or web development were a book this thick and hold up my hand to like represent, you know, like 3 or 4 inches of like a thick textbook, SEO is like 10 times that. And there's not a clear manual also. You just get best practices and it's half art, half science. And then you become like a magician that makes it happen essentially, right? And you learn to trust certain things that you do. So, clients are typically severely out of their depth in terms of understanding the nuances of what even goes into SEO broadly as a term, or specifically in like organic content creation versus like paid SEO or whatever other type of SEO we're talking about. But I think it's important when people are talking about SEO and AI being integrated to it and like how to show up there, to consider the source of the food for AI. Right? Like if you search for something and it doesn't have good information, what's the first thing it does? You watch it like it's telling you that it's crawling web pages to aggregate this information for you. So it becomes a bit of a filter, but still the content is king. That's like the oldest phrase in SEO. It's still all about content. If you're making good content that satisfies the desire for people to be an instant genius by just pulling out their phone, you're gonna prevail, and the AI engines are always going to gravitate towards whatever is best in terms of content to show that up in whatever they dream up tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think, Aaron, you said a couple things that really resonated with me. First of all, the clients don't have a clue, and mine don't want to have a clue. That's what they pay us for, right? They want to focus on their businesses and what they're doing best, and they're paying us to know what's going on for their marketing and SEO. And the other thing is, I think that things are constantly changing. Right. And there's always something latest, greatest that's coming out, and it's trying to figure out where the curve is going and staying ahead of it if you can.
Yeah, we were talking about it internally, and the other day we were saying, so like SEO used to be about visibility and traffic, and now it's really much more about like credibility, so that you're coming up over and over again so people actually choose you and click on you.
Exactly.
There's a lot of the content is king has come back to this conversation a lot on the podcast. It's a really complicated one. There's a game streamer who released a YouTube short that I watched. He talked about how all these people that are streaming these games to other people are using the similar editing tools to produce basically the same variation of content all across the internet. And so you're getting the same episode of the same TV show on like a bunch of different channels that you can watch. And it's lost some of that ability to connect with the consumer at a higher level. We see it on websites from a content creation standpoint that everyone's telling everyone to make better content. And you do try to make better content, but it's also being fed directly into LLMs and AI tools because they're using all that content to create the best answers. So there's a complicated part of this that I'm asking a tough question here, but how do you continue to make content that's more relevant without feeding everything that used to have a funnel on your website that would make your customer make a decision for you? That's where I feel like SEO is changing the most, is this funnel, this whole website development process where you try to funnel a customer down to a buying decision has almost been stripped from you. And now you're supposed to just provide the answer to the questions that you don't know. And how are you really trying to optimize that content for your customers? I know this is a difficult question to answer because this is like a modern SEO question, a modern problem. But
I don't think that that's changed. I think that as marketers, especially digital marketers in sort of a wild, wild west field, which is sort of self-governing mostly, we have figured out that there are certain principles that always remain true. Like a funnel's a funnel's a funnel. There's always going to be a funnel. Like people are going to not be aware of a thing, become aware of a thing, look for solutions for a thing, buy a thing. Like that's just the natural order of nature. Yeah, not really. I mean, yes, that it's a little more complicated than that, and some people skip steps and yada, yada, but basically that's fundamentally the thing. And when you have a really great diversified marketing engine for a business, it's going to definitely include components to that. But how that looks changes with technology. For instance, I bet everybody here now on this show has considered at some point, at what point do I start looking into like 3D and virtual technology? Like at what point is that going to be ubiquitous in homes like TVs, and I have to change my service offering and have another specialist on my team that focuses just on that space? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think we're a little behind the curve on that. I would have thought it would have come around by now. I also was looking for my flying car before I hit 40, but whatever, right? Here we are. But the virtual space is definitely going to be a thing. Video games, you mentioned that earlier, typically pioneer a lot of digital mediums and interactivity between multiple players and like environments and things like that. And my nephew has, like a 3D thing that he goes and he plays games with people and stuff like that. It's just not a great marketing space yet. And everybody that's using it tends to be very young. My grandma doesn't have a set. Right. So if I'm working with a client who needs services to sell services, like I, as a well-meaning and, experienced marketer, I'm not even going to pay attention to that for my client. It's not on my radar yet. So I think it just changes. Right. And in terms of like AI and these other services being involved, it's just upon us, like as marketers, to look at those mediums and then judge for ourselves when it becomes appropriate to start to work that into our service offering and to help our clients in that space. And there are just a lot of new things right now that are skyrocketing in terms of like conversation, but not necessarily in practicality for execution for our clients.
Jaryn and Erika, I want to give you a chance. Yeah, if you have any insight on a very complicated question of just about how that funnel's changed.
It's obviously layered. I agree with you to a certain extent, Aaron. Like at the end of the day, it's the core services, it's the core strategies we know are important. It's about quality content. I'm not as afraid to involve AI like in our strategy building and like our actual content creation, as long as there's always a human along the way. So we want like a human to make sure that we're fact checking it, because I think it can be really good. AI can be great from an optimization standpoint, or even like competitive research standpoint, or just even like brainstorming. But yeah, when it comes to the actual, if you want authoritative content that actually gives a unique original perspective, you still need that human side of it. And then, yeah, you asked a good question too, Koa, of like, how do you deal with all your content that's already out there? I have several of our sites right now that are going through a big content overhaul where basically we already have blogs that we're ranking, and now we're just going back and repurposing them, adding in like quick at a glance things so they can pull into the AI results more. So we're not like reinventing the wheel, but we are trying to make it work with the bots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the at a glance is really important for blogging now. And I don't think it's a tool or trick that a lot of people have caught on to, but I definitely agree with you there. Absolutely. I think that's so important moving forward to include that at a glance at the top of every single article.
I was just going to say, it's AI is a tool. Like I worked with I talk with a lot of other creative agencies frequently, and there was a lot of like, oh my God, is this going to like kill, it's like the same conversation as like when Squarespace, Wix, and Weebly all came out and people were like, oh my God, web design's over. No, it's not. I mean, first of all, those tools are designed for people to be able to build websites who aren't web designers. It is just a removal to barrier to entry. It just solves a different problem. But any given day of the week, if I'm worth my weight in salt, I can produce something far better in less time than anybody who's just using one of those tools makes in a website. If I can't, I'm in the wrong business. So, AI is the same thing. And I really had this idea kicking around the back of my head. Like, I think it would be so fascinating to take like 3 different people and then go, okay, look, your brief is to make a 1,200 page article that answers this specific question. Here's your primary keyword phrase or your seed keyword phrase, and here are your related ones. You have 10 minutes, go. And to see what each of those 3 people could make using whatever AI tool their choice, Claude, chat, whatever. And to see the difference in quality and the actual outcome in how they could get something to rank and what their strategy was. Did they try to go more long tail with it to guarantee a rank? And did they do keyword research to figure out, is the search volume there for that type of thing? But every single person is going to come up with something unique. And I think that's fascinating because it doesn't mean that AI is making our business a commodity. It's just removing the barrier to entry. It's just making it easier for us to charge less because we can crank out more content. And we know Google's already told us, all right, you guys win. AI is here and it's here to stay. I'm not going to penalize you if I think it's AI that's too much of a mess to try to figure out anyways. Go and be fruitful. Just make your content good. That was basically the response, right? So now it's up to us to create that. But like what I create with my SOP for mental health clinicians is going to be generally superior to what I even could create for, say, an auto manufacturer. Like I've had like a couple of clients in the auto space. That's it. Like my depth of expertise in order to guide that tool to the right content, the right messaging for the right person is going to be less than in the mental health space. And we all share that. Plus our approaches are different. So it's just a tool, and it's no guarantee that what comes out is going to be great.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that is important to keep in mind is AI is only as good as what you put in, right? It's kind of like a recipe in the kitchen. If you're using really good ingredients for your recipe, the chances of you having something fabulous to eat on the backside is pretty darn good. If you use, all those generic ingredients going in, you might not have a good result. So, AI is the same thing. What are you putting into it for what you want to get out? How good is your query and how specific is your query? And what are you feeding into the system to get out really what you want to get out in an optimal way?
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And Aaron, you just said something too that made me think we haven't even touched on this. We're kind of talking in general right now, but for those like nuanced industries, so health and wellness, I know I've dealt with this with legal before. Sometimes you can't rely on AI because it's going to say misinformation that's actually going to get you in a bad situation. So you always need that human element and that actual professional level in the industry to make sure that it's accurate and you're not digging yourself into a hole.
I shared this just briefly with you, the three of you, before we jumped on the recording, but I spent the weekend, and I think I estimated at nearly 30 hours over the weekend, building out a website with AI and trying to optimize all the content for my wife, who's opening a physical therapy practice. And it did great. It was like really cool at some of the service pages where it has a lot of information about like certain disorders or stuff we're going to treat. And that stuff's pretty available across the internet. And then when we were writing maybe customer reviews we said we wanted them and we gave them some and it fabricated a ton of them. Then we were like, we're not going to claim a bunch of fake reviews. And then it said my wife was coaching her kids' sports teams and a bunch of other stuff that just really wasn't true. And I was like, if we don't have the checks in place or the right person driving this, you potentially create some serious problems. And that was before I even gave AI access to my computer to start installing software and doing other things that I don't think most people have actually utilized it for. And you're realizing that you better have the right cook in the kitchen. Otherwise, you may have just thrown some rat poison in something and everyone's going to die. It was pretty scary, the amount of change that could go on there.
No, I was just going to say, that opens up another really interesting question, which is, can AI replace human nuance? And I think certainly not when it comes to industries where trust is currency, kind of like in your finance or healthcare, the example that you gave, Koa, or law or public policy. And so in those particular cases, I think AI generated generic content can be really detectable and dangerous.
And then people don't think you're real. They now you're losing authority.
Yeah, the trust aspect of what's going on online is where I think that we'll move on to that question actually, because now, and even lawyers, I think, are a great example of the trust aspect. Like AI can give you a lot of great advice, but do you just go into court with the information that AI gave you and trust that it was cited correctly, that you're like really established there? I don't think most lawyers, and I think there's been many that have gotten in trouble for it now, so they're probably being even more cautious. You don't just take that into court and take it as blanket truth. You have to start checking things. So now when it comes to the authority, the content you've created on your site, being genuine in that and really making an emotional connection, there's a question of like, how does AI and how does Google determine genuine content and versus the garbage that's being produced? And what are the authority triggers today in modern marketing? For a long time, it would have just been considered guest blog posting. but it feels like there's been some unique transitions over the last couple of years. What else is a factor that you guys are seeing?
Yeah, I mean, link building is still a part of it. I think it's more about diversifying those link buildings. So I think what surprised a lot of people is that Reddit and socials that have already been established and maybe have had content on it for a while are pulling into the results, which is exciting to me because I've been including social media as part of our SEO strategies for a long time. And now people that have been sitting on that are suddenly not coming up. We're also seeing a rise in like PRs, podcasts, really diversifying where those links are coming from, which I like. It means that you're not just doing the same thing over and over. SEO is always supposed to be about diversifying. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with Jaryn. Diversity is the spice of life right now when it comes to SEO. I remember back in the day, blogging was supposed to be the end all be all, right? When it came to SEO for websites. And that's what everybody was looking at and considering and nothing else. But look how that has changed. So I think you've really got to diversify and be, it's kind of scary to say that you have to be everywhere and do everything. But I think in the new world of AI and SEO, you kind of need to start thinking that direction.
I agree with that, but I think an important nuance to that conversation is considering your clients and their resources. We work with a lot of solo practitioners that are starting and they just simply cannot afford to have us be spread that thin effectively.
Sure.
So, if I did one content piece on different platforms once a month, all month, like I would still not have hit all of the platforms that I should probably consider by the end of the year. That's just not going to be effective. So, then that comes back to our ball court in terms of like, how am I going to devise a strategy that's going to be effective for this client? So I think you guys are right, but also like not every business has the resources / the strategy may not make sense to try to tackle everything. I still think that the marketing principle of like buyer personas, whatever you want to call them, we do clinician profiles on our clinicians, which also tell us, and we use AI to help rough that in, and then we tighten it up from there. But like, who's your ideal client? And then what are the top 10 blog posts for that type of client? What are their top 10 searches? Like give us an idea of what this main client base is, so we have sort of a blueprint to work off of when we make creative. And when we're talking about like all the different platforms, I don't know. I mean, I just started riffing on this idea on this call with you guys, but like consider the source, consider the food that AI consumes. It's looking for the best possible answer. And so it's going to look for what answer comes up the most frequently and adjudicate that as a score, right? Like if I see this answer 100 times and one other answer once, odds are the 100 times answer is correct. So that's what's going to feed you. So prompt engineering is a new profession. Are we all in agreement with that? That's just a thing now. Okay. And we're all pioneering it in our own way and writing our own SOPs for like how to draft that stuff up so that it can be repeatable and the output can be standardized as much as possible so that I don't have to reinvent this crap every time I go back to go do it again. Right. And so when you're thinking about that, then you can consider like, okay, well, if I'm an attorney, I have a legal problem and I search AI for it and it gave me a result. What I just got was an amalgamation of the internet. Am I willing to roll the dice with what I'm working on this being the right answer for this question? No. If I am, and I'm just going to go over some examples that I know everybody's done. If I notice something with my body or my health and I don't want to Google it, I go to chat and I'm like, hey, I experienced this issue. What would be the top reasons for this issue? Why are you doing that? You're doing that because you're in information gathering. You're trying to figure out what kind of conversation should I have with my doctor? Should I even see a doctor? And you're not even going to totally trust the answer if it tells you, no, you don't need to see a doctor. But if it tells you no, you're probably going to like feel a little less anxious about the issue, right? So that's how people are using it. And what I find surprising is that most households are not using this in a way that anyone in our careers are. They're just not leaning on it in the same way that we are. We're like, I don't know about you guys, but I've used it for recipes. Hey, I don't have this ingredient. Is that cool? Can I use a substitute? And then boom, instant answer. But that's low stakes. And it's probably right. And the more you interact with it, the more confident you get in the type of query that you're doing with it and what the results would be. It's the same as Google though. Before AI, it was the same problem. You would look through, but you just have to click on like 5 results yourself and then compare them all yourself. So I think we're in a spot now where we're just getting the information in a way where we have to build a new human filter ourselves to figure out what's crap versus what's not. And so to draw it back to the main question, what builds authority? I mean, I don't know if this sounds trite, but authority builds authority. If you're not an authority in your space, you don't know what to say, your content sucks, you fail, game over. Like, that's just it, man. If you do know what you're doing in your space and your content makes sense and you're staying on the edge of what's happening in the trends of that space, your content's going to be great. And then you're going to reap the rewards of that. So I think authority builds authority. You know, if you do a good piece, and you're smart about what piece you're making, like we made a, ultimate marketing guide of 2026, which is like a super long form. Here's everything you need to know. If you're a mental health clinician, you need to do marketing or you want to bootstrap it yourself. This is it. I mean, all my experience on a web page, here you go. No, you don't need an email address or anything. It's just there. But I know that thing's going to get linked all over the place, right? And it was worth every minute that I spent on that thing. And I'll just update it over time. But that's authority is authority. If you know what you're talking about, your content's going to rock. That's it.
No, that's an amazing point. Yeah. Well, and kind of something you were saying in there too, Aaron, that I thought was a really great example. It was a real world example because you're completely right. Most of our clients, they can't pay for everything. They have to be strategic with their funds and strategic with their content. I love the way you put that. To have authority, you must have authority. So one of the things that we've done whenever we approach one of our clients is, because you're completely right, they can't do it all, is we try to see where they're already succeeding. So for example, if we already have a client that has a ton of followers on LinkedIn, we're going to try to leverage his content there a little bit more because he's already built an authority there. Or if we have a client that's already built out this great YouTube channel, but he's not being found anywhere else, we're going to try to repurpose that content so it could be used maybe for social or for some blogs on their website or what have you, but just trying to leverage on the proper platforms and build that authority that they already have elsewhere so we can grow even more for them.
Yeah, I think that's super smart, Jaryn, and we're doing exactly the same thing. Is where have you seen some success? And the fact that you're looking at that too gives me comfort because, you know, I think great minds think alike. So, but yeah, I think there's absolutely validity in that. The
authority builds authority. Is that the way we said that?
Authority is authority. Yeah, it just is. Like, you know, you could try, like you guys have all probably heard the term fake it till you make it. And it's just, it makes me like sigh. Like when especially with entrepreneurs, I'm like, please don't do that. Please, don't fake it till you make it. Go learn something and provide a real service to somebody. Can we just start there? And then 2, on top of that, when you're considering your pricing, if you're not talking in real terms with your clients about what their annual revenue is and what a reasonable marketing budget is that they can afford, start. Right? Because your services should be based on that. You can figure out how to engineer a solution for a client much easier if you know the resources they have to work with versus you dreaming up a solution and then being like, hey, client, does this fit for you? Like, what a crappy conversation. So we always reverse engineer all of our solutions. That's how our sales process works. We don't have packages. We have services. I help you figure out what your reasonable marketing budget is. I help you figure out client lifetime value. In the case of mental health clinicians, also what's like your average sessions and your total number of clients to figure out those things, average billable rate. And then I go, okay, now that we know that, here's what I recommend for your marketing plan. Here are the reasonable conservative outcomes. And here's the ROI that we expect. That's what we're going to check back in on in 3 to 6 months.
I think that I'm seeing marketing agencies almost rebrand themselves as fractional CMOs more so than marketing agencies because they're so much deeper in the consulting aspect than what used to be just a fulfillment aspect. Like now you're part of the brand building. You're no longer just fulfilling tasks for them. So one of the things I've seen as well, especially when authority builds authority, it's kind of like we've seen some very big players that have come, like that have been, the marketing agencies are big and they're working with really big clients. So these big national brands, and they've seen a decrease in organic traffic. And so they have expectations, whether it's to the board, to the executive team, there's a certain number of leads, there's a certain amount of revenue, there's all these different KPIs that they have to hold up on. And with a decrease in organic traffic, it feels like they've compensated there by increasing paid ads. And we're seeing an increase in paid ads over the year where more people are trying to generate leads there because they've seen changes that are less quantifiable through organic search, through LLMs. They don't necessarily know the data to track there. And so there's this question of like, where should our budget really be going? And I appreciate that you guys have all touched on that, because with paid ads, organic, the social media platforms, I'm really just curious, with all the changes that are going on, where do you rank these? Like, where are you ranking where the customer's budgets really need to go? Where do you see influencing the AEO, GEO conversation the most when you place the customer's budgets there? And I think some people have referred to the budgets as like a point system. You know, you have a limited amount of points. Where are you seeing those points be the most effective for your customer?
I think a lot of it depends on the customer still. I mean, I could give another answer, but I really think it gets back to the customer and what their ultimate goals are.
I think I'd love for you guys to dive a little deeper on that too. And actually, because you're all in slightly different industries too. So we'd love to say, like, based on what you're doing, where are you seeing it be the most effective?
I'm actually seeing a little bit of the opposite of what you just described, Koa, where people that have been investing only in ads are now getting burned, whereas people I kind of alluded to before who have always been investing in SEO are getting ahead. So I don't know if you guys have noticed it. I don't know if you dabble in ads like I do, but Google rolled out a fun button last year where you can collapse all sponsored results. And so now obviously a bunch of clients are freaking out because they're paying good hard-earned money to get up there. And now with a click of a button, they're losing out on that click and revenue. And so at the same time, if they've been optimizing for SEO, they're not missing out. They're already appearing, hopefully, in those AI results. So I'm actually having a lot of conversations about how can we be more strategic with our paid budgets and how can we expand our SEO strategies, because it feels like the paid ads have taken a huge hit. I don't know if you guys have experienced the same.
Well, so that's true, right? But it's just market share, and most of our clients tend to not dominate a complete market, so you almost never are in the game of trying to corner an entire market through your one client. I think that's most people, so I think I'm going to frame my answer through that, because paid ads still works. It always does. In the mental health space, it's great. It's typically best for practices that are full solo practices or higher. So in terms of just context for other businesses, you need to have a revenue of like 100 to 120,000 a year before you should even start looking at paid ads at all. It was full stop. I mean, if you're not running $25 to $30 a day minimum in an ads campaign, you're taking too long to learn, you're exiting the learning phase without enough information, yada, yada, yada. I don't care what you heard anywhere else. That's just a fact. Okay. It doesn't even matter what your industry is. You need that to start. Paid ads is great, but it's better as a tool to help you get more immediate control, especially over like business cycle issues. Mental health clinicians experience something called the summer slump. Families go on vacation, kids are out of school. It's just not as easy to go to therapy. So your referrals go down. It's just a fact. You do paid ads, you can kind of mitigate that by adding a little bit of marketing budget to make more on the back end. And really, if you're smart, you're planning that like 3 months in advance of the summer so that you go through the sales cycle and you're already banking that revenue to smooth it out, when that hits. In terms of strategy, though, organic SEO, full stop, should be everybody's. If you're not running that and you don't have a foundation in it, you're missing out on compounding interest, basically. Because if you have an agency that makes a new unique page for you every month on a new search phrase, like key search phrase with or a seed search phrase with related search terms, and it ranks well and it generates traffic, that's going to keep doing that in month 2. And month 3 and month 4, and every lead that you generate off of that just drove down your cost per lead based on what you paid for that asset. That's how the math works. You don't get that with paid ads. You don't get that with social. You need a constant input to generate an output. And with paid ads, you can only optimize so far. So say your cost per lead, you can get down to $10, maybe 20, depending on the industry or whatever. Cool. That's as low as it's ever going to go. And you're going to have to keep feeding that monster to get anything out of it. With the paid ads, it just keeps getting lower. You get diminishing returns, obviously, on a page because you keep dividing by each lead that you get, but you get 100 leads on a page that you paid $1,000 for. Do the math, and it's going to keep doing that next year. So that's, I think, a fundamental strategy for every business should always be organic SEO first. If they're managing it or someone else is doing it, fine, whatever. You can diversify who's handling things, but organic SEO first, fundamentally, then paid ads, then social for like authority amplification, community outreach, like get connected with people. That's what that's for. But it's just paid ads is a reliable lead engine. It requires more sustained input, and social is just kind of a platform to get brand awareness, in my opinion. Like, yes, it generates leads. Yes, there are strategies around that, but it just quite frankly sucks when trying to plan any kind of inputs and outputs. I cannot promise you I do 100 posts, you're going to get a certain something out of the back end. It just doesn't work that way.
And I think, Erika, what you said in the beginning of this too, I think there's a lot of power to it, actually, that every customer is different. You really can't say that one budget's going to be successful placed in specific tasks. So from that being said, I do think there's a complicated part of understanding the customer. One of the things I find the most complicated about the marketing industry is pulling that data out of someone that has no idea what you're asking, or what, like, they don't necessarily know what they do. They just want you to make more customers show up for them. How do you actually pull that information out? Because I don't think it can be scripted. It's such a unique skill to really communicate that. How are you able to find out where to put that budget?
I'll push back on that. It can, but there's only one way it really can be done. You have to specialize as an agency.
Knowing beforehand exactly what you need to ask.
Yeah. So like, we have a clinician profile questionnaire, CPQ is what we call it. Every person that we onboard goes through it. If we work with a group practice, and so for translation to other businesses, because this could work the same way, if we work with a business that needs to run multiple campaigns on multiple products, like, make no mistake, a group practice, each clinician is a product, right? Like, they provide a service. So what we do when we create paid ads campaigns is we run them on a per client or a per clinician basis. So they fill out a form. We understand the full scope of what they can handle or what problems they can solve. And then we actually, because clinicians really, really are terrible at being like, but this is what I do. They're very inclusive and want to be generalistic about everything. So I had to devise a way to like actually lock them down. So we have them basically a simple form where they check all the boxes of the things they can do. And then we give a radio button where they have to pick one. And that's required to fill out before we can start their campaign. And it's like, where do you do your best work though? Because that's the magnet. Like, that's going to be the people that keep coming back to purchase. And now, to kind of abstract that from like group practices and mental health, that could be any business. Who are your return customers? Where do you make the most money? Like, if we get you that buyer, how is that going to take the amount that you paid for marketing and drive that down against what you make on the back end? That's what we're all in the business of doing. I
like that tactic. I do think that's pretty unique. I haven't give them the chance to tell them everything, let them feel good about that, and then make them pick one of them that they want to prioritize. Erika and Jaryn, what are you guys doing in those situations? Tell me how you are able to pull that information out of your customers.
Yeah, much like Aaron, we have a questionnaire, and we're much more generalist in terms of our client base than Aaron is, who works primarily with mental health practitioners. Our primary client base is small businesses, and that could be in any industry. But still, we've devised a questionnaire that we go through at the beginning of every single campaign that pulls that information out of them. Sometimes once the client goes through the questionnaire, we find out that they're not clear on who their target audience is. And so we have to help them figure that out and come up with the target audience to really dial in their marketing. And that shocks me still, after having been in business 20 plus years, that there are still businesses out there, small businesses that don't understand who their target audience is. It's shocking, but it happens every day.
Yeah, agreed. I'm like Erika. We do not just have the one industry that we work in with, like Aaron, with this health and wellness. We do some health and wellness, but we also have like home service, e-com. We've got small to medium sized businesses, but we also have global sized businesses with multiple locations worldwide. So we have to look at it from the big standpoint as well as the small standpoint. We do have an opening questionnaire, but honestly, whenever we're just in the discovery phase, I personally have a lot of meetings with you just to get to know you, figure out, where your areas of opportunity are, where you're succeeding, getting the competitive research. So before we even enter a new agreement, first I try to dive into that. But I completely agree with what you just said, Erika. Half the time, sometimes they don't even know themselves because they start to see the content come to life and they start realizing, oh, I don't have a lot of reviews, or, oh, I've never really looked at this service from this point of view. Like, it really does blow their mind. But something that I always say is this is why it needs to be a partnership. Too many people think marketing is something I'm going to throw over the wall and I never have to think about it again because it's a machine. It's like, no. We need to do this together. You need to be able to work with me so that when we find these holes, we can solve it together. So yeah, it's a journey. We're all trying to make it easy in the beginning, it sounds like, but I think we're all figuring it out.
I would riff off of that just real quick and say, do you find, this is my personal experience, so I'm wondering what the two of you think about this, but do you find that as an agency owner, it is in your best interest to make sure that your client is crystal on that stuff before you start? Because if not, you run into like a client attrition problem where like they hired you and then the results are not what they wanted, but they weren't clear on the results anyway, and it's all just murky. And so the client retention component to this conversation is directly connected to like, how did you start? Did they know why you were recommending a strategy and what the outcomes were going to be? And was that aligned with what they wanted to do as a business? And when things, progress through that strategy, are you having clear conversations about it? Because like you guys said, if a client doesn't know what they should be marketing, like starting the conversation there or like charging and just running with it, man, I just don't know that leads to a good outcome ever.
Yeah. Well, although a lot of the clients that come to us might not know that part of the equation, what I find that 99% of them know is what they want the outcome to be. So I want more clients, or I want to increase my revenue, or I want more visibility in my local community, or whatever that is. I think most of them have a pretty good idea of that. And so I think that's always a good place to start. And then you can kind of backtrack.
Yeah. And Aaron, I totally know exactly the pain point that you're referring to. I remember when we first started out, that was absolutely it. But yes, so we're definitely much clearer, I'd say, in the beginning. You always make sure you're doing those check-ins, that you're like, remember, this was the goal, so this is where we're at, so let's make sure that we're still in line. It's okay if the strategy needs to change or if your goals have changed, but we need to be on the same page about that. But then the other thing that we do, honestly, to try to just make sure that whenever someone's going to choose to work with us, that they're really on board and they're ready for this marketing partnership, we've just been putting out a lot of free information, honestly. So we've been developing our YouTube channel. We've got a great email list, and we actually are having people engage with us. And it's because at the end of the day, we just want to educate you. We're trying to give you another path forward. And it's okay if you don't have all the answers yet. Maybe it's not time to market yet. Maybe you need to figure all this out. So that's been helping us, at least, Aaron, because at least we're putting that out there for the people that maybe don't even know if they're ready for this yet.
Yeah, like reduces the friction when you start to have those conversations. They at least know the language and the basic concepts and ideas. It's like part of our sales deck when we have our second call with clients, where the first call is just an intro to make sure they're there and a good fit. The second call is actually, we ask for, okay, we're going to actually do a marketing strategy. So what's your annual revenue? What's your annual expenses? And like, our clients give us this information because we've already established our authority up front on the first call. Like, we do need this from you, and here's why. We're going to help you figure out client lifetime value, average number of sessions, average billable rate. Like, you should know this as a business owner because it completely is your scorecard that you should be checking in on every 6 to 12 months. But it also is what we use to know how much you can afford to spend as a business to acquire a new client without losing money. And don't you want to know that? I need these numbers to help you figure that out. And I'm going to give that to you for free in the next call. Are you down? Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays work best for me. What days work best for you? That's how I book them.
One thing that's coming to mind here, we're just about out of time, so I have to ask you guys a couple questions before I let you go. One thing that came to mind as we talked about the asking the right questions and understanding them is there's a question we've asked on the podcast quite often about operational excellence being, which is more important, SEO genius or operational excellence. And when you talk about that, my first thought was SEO genius is always pretty valuable, right? Like, you need a company that knows how to do it. But I am in sales, and I know all of you are because you run agencies. And I know Aaron is because I just heard it, part of that sales pitch. But a sales pitch is only as good as the operational excellence that backs it up, right? And it's really interesting for you guys to have the scripts already played out because you know that there's certain questions you have to ask in order to have your operations running effectively. And I think that that's really interesting. So I want to know just quickly, is it operational excellence or is it SEO genius? What makes the best, or marketing genius, I guess, in this situation? What makes the best SEO agency or the best marketing agency?
Oh, the best marketing agency.
You guys just have to throw it out there. What is it? I'll say marketing genius or operational excellence. Which one is more important?
I mean, I would just say succinctly operational excellence, hands down. Like, you know, clients want consistency. I've had to tell my team that, like, we're not making art projects. When we do websites, guys, they're not going to hang this on their wall. They want it to generate leads. Like, if we use a lot of the same stuff, they don't care as long as it works. So you have to have that first. I think that's a requirement. You need operational excellence and you need like proven, repeatable results, full stop. After that, whatever kind of genius you can layer on top of that, great. But clients I've never met a client that's like, I'm willing to roll the dice. Like, give me a D20 sided die. And if it hits 20, we hit jackpot. Otherwise we all fail. Nobody's in the game of wanting to do that.
Erika and Jaryn, do either one of you dare disagree now? Yeah.
Absolutely not. No, what he said, 110%. You got to have the operational excellence. Otherwise, you know, you're going to fall flat on your face and your clients are going to figure that out pretty darn quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be a brat and say, I don't want to choose. We need to have both. So we clearly need the operations. We all know that, but I'm sorry. We've also all received those spammy emails that's like, oh, I can get you such and such links and I'm going to deliver them this time. We all know that, sure,
operational
we'll
excellence without any genius.
Without any genius, exactly. So the idea is none of us are spammers, but we also can have the operation to get it done right with that expertise.
Okay, and we only have seconds for this last question, so I'll ask it, and if we need to, we can maybe even share it on LinkedIn and open this conversation up further. But over the next few years, what's one strategy that you're placing your bets on for marketing? Where do you see the future of marketing going, and where are you kind of placing your bets?
For me, brand authority is an entity, not just ranking pages, not just backlinks, but building clients into recognized, cited, trusted voices.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of branders that are going to suddenly think that they're SEOers because brand authority is going to get so big.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. Just really good long form content mainly is kind of the best thing to kind of stick to. I mean, the policy that I always remind my team of is if you are doing Google a favor, you'll win long term. So put yourself in Google's shoes. What are you doing? What content are you creating? Are you trying to shortcut the system, or are you trying to help them make everybody an instant genius by pulling out their phone? If you do that, if you do the latter, you're gonna be sitting pretty.
Yeah, making life easier on your consumers makes business a little better for you. I like that perspective, that just making it easy for someone else is an active service goes a long way, right? Well, we're out of time. I appreciate the three of you joining us on this episode of SEO On Air. I feel like we had some cool perspective from the three of you on just the different strategies that you're implementing. I do think brand, I agree. I'm curious to see if I ask that question across the internet, how many people agree that that's the biggest and most important part of marketing over the next few years. We may tag you on a LinkedIn post as we release it. Thank you for joining us on SEO On Air, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you.